All right, well, good afternoon. My name is Sean McGuire, and this is a meeting of the Albany County Land Bank Finance Committee. This meeting is being conducted by teleconference in accordance with the state's open meetings law. It is also being broadcast to YouTube for the public's listening and viewing, although there's just going to be an audio feed for this meeting alone. For the committee, of all of our members present, Charles Toohey, Natisha Alexander, and Sam Wells. For the staff, we have attending in the room myself, Shelby, and Susan. I believe Lynette will be joining us shortly. But so we have a quorum. We'll call the meeting to order. It is 2:35 p.m. In your packets that were distributed ahead of time, we have the review and the approval of the minutes from April 9th, 2025. You had hopefully a chance to take a look at those and let us know if you have any corrections or additions or changes.
I have none. None here.
All right, hearing none, can I just have a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Second.
Sam, Natisha. Thank you. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
I don't hear anybody opposed or abstained, but if you are, please let me know. All right, so we'll move into the review of the financial reports that were sent out ahead of time here. Like usual, I'm going to focus on the first 2 pages, which is the balance sheet, and then I will then go into the budget versus actuals, which will be the next 3 pages. The rest of the document, and we'll delete some of these pages for the full board meeting, are just some additional profit and loss sheets that our outside accountant prepares for us. All right, so as of April 30th, 2025, the Land Bank is on a solid financial position. We have $5.74 million in our total assets. You'll see that reflected on the balance sheet on line 37. So despite operating challenges in our fiscal year, that's a very good sign for us. We do maintain a strong liquid position with $3.61 million in our bank accounts. You'll see that on line 12 there. You'll see there's a few more bank accounts than in the past, and that just reflects the movement we've had transferring money out of M&T Bank and to Pioneer Bank, and that has gone quite well. M&T regrets that we, had to move some our money out of there, but they completely understood that they never had a resolution to the collateralization above the FDIC limits. But to maintain our relationship with M&T Bank, we are keeping some money in there below those FDIC limits in case of any other changes or if something happens, we have another bank to still work with. That $3.6 million is about 63% of our total assets, and so those cash reserves give us a great amount of stability when we've got a time of operational losses, which we've been facing down just with the decline in property inventory. So on the balance sheet itself, we've got a healthy asset to liability ratio. Our equity does comprise about 81% of our balance sheet. The strong equity position of $4.6 million, you'll see that on line 77. That provides us significant financial cushion to weather any operating deficits. And right now we're showing an operating deficit of $305,179 on line 76. I know that we're going to see
Where is that? Where's the operating deficit? What line?
Line 76, our net revenue line on the balance sheet. That's our current operating deficit. But we do have $4.6 million in equity, and that's the next line down on line 77. I'll turn to property inventory, and I'm sorry, just jumping around here, but just in terms of telling the story, we do have to move around a little bit on this sheet here. So I'm going to go back to page 1, talk about the property inventory. We have a $1.3 million on line 28. And so, I'll note that there's a significant adjustment to the market value of $2.5 million. We take a loss of $2.5 million in adjusting for what we hold and what value actually is at line 27. And so that's it just reflects the challenges we have with some of the properties and the condition that they're in. They don't always reflect what would probably be a market value if they were in a better situation.
Oh, I asked you this last month. It's, you know, just the top line. How many buildings, how many lots is that? Our inventory is roughly how many buildings and how many lots?
Roughly 250 properties. Of that, 30, less than 40, 30, I believe it's 36, but it's less than 40 are actual buildings. So we're significantly into lots between what's being held for co-development and just smaller lots that we have a hard time marketing because they're landlocked, they have poor site conditions. They're ones that we're going to have a very hard time finding somebody to take on. So I think we are constantly trying to figure out how we're going to market those or find somebody to take those pieces on. And that was a couple of the lots off of Delaware Avenue a couple of months ago that the board looked at that in the past, somebody from out of town wanted to take a chance on them, but it didn't end up working out for them, so. All right, I'll continue on our current liabilities. On line 72, we have current liabilities of a little more than $1 million. Again, manageable because of our cash position. Our largest obligations are our deferred revenue from grants, about $541,000. You see that on line 67. And then our account payable of line 48 to Albany County. That's the $250,000 that we do receive, which I haven't gotten that from the county yet this year for 2025, but we're due to schedule a time to get that. Usually we see that the second quarter of the year. And so once that comes in, that will give us that jump in cash, but we'll still hold that payable out there based on how we sell property off, and we just haven't hit that threshold where we would send something back to them. So any questions on the balance sheet altogether?
None
Sure, I
here.
have
Alright,
a
I'll
few
move on.
questions. What's
Yes.
can you explain first page, line 10, the Bill.com money out clearing? What's that?
So we use Bill.com to pay a lot of our vendors, either with a check or, electronic payments. It's just we use QuickBooks to manage our books, and Bill.com is the service that handles a lot of the payments that go out. And so we have some money that is in there because I might have a bill as of April 30th. I'm not actually paying until, let's say, May 5th. And so we sort of hold that out there.
Okay. And then
Just hasn't cleared our account yet. Or it might be a check that's written that hasn't been cashed either. That also falls into that.
got it. And then for line 76, the net revenue, the negative 305, do you expect that to grow? If so, by how much? And the second part of my question is, what's the plan to kind of mitigate that?
Yeah, I think that we'll shrink that number up. We've got to get some of these properties sold that we're holding on to. So 48 Second Avenue, for example, that closing is next week. So yeah, tentatively we have that for next week. We'll get that $215 from the county, and that'll flip that number around. But then I'm going to see a demolition bill for 14 Stevens Street that happened earlier this month. Was an emergency demo that starts at $160,000. It was a 4-story brick building that the city observed a crack on the rear of the building that wasn't visible from the street. But they had been at the backs of some other buildings doing some other work, and they noticed it, and we went out and looked at it, and it was not a good condition. So that building's going to have to come down. We'll try to reposition one of our grants, our LBI Phase 2, to absorb some of that, so that it's not coming out of our revenue. So we may have to reposition some demolitions along the way. So we'll try to move some of the grant money to cover that, so softens the blow to us. I will say in response to that, Lynette and I have developed an improved mechanism for tracking property conditions, that documents when we go out and what those look like, and so that's been very helpful so far. We haven't uncovered anything, so we're hoping that this was the one out there that was just hiding on us. Unfortunately, we didn't have any documentation at the back of the building to even suggest that anybody knew the problem existed.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Natisha. All right, moving off the balance sheet, we'll go to the profit and loss. That's the one that says Albany County Land Bank Corporation, budget versus actuals, budget FY25 P&L, and continues on. It's about 3 pages here. So, the first 4 months of 2025 certainly has its financial challenges. We have that net loss of $305,000 that we talked about. Some of that, again, is due to timing of payments annual payments that go out, things like insurance payments that get done early in the year, and then just timing of other grants and reimbursables that come in. So I'm not overly concerned about it. Again, just primarily stems from a significant revenue shortfall against our budget projections, but we only prepare an annual budget. We don't do it on a month-by-month basis per se. So the annual budget is still projected at $3.46 million. Our actual revenue through April only reached $107,150. You'll see that on line 19, total revenue. And it's primarily due to the grant delays on line 6 and lower than expected property sales. Line 6 is our LBI Phase 1 and Phase 2 income. I will say that, we did get the $100,000 for LBI Phase 1. Because we have gotten half of that in for the year. We have the other half for the rest of the year. LBI Phase 2, there will be an item on the board agenda this month because we did get the approval from the Office of Community Renewal for our funding there. So I'll present that to the full board so we can just sign and accept that and keep our Phase 2 capital program moving along. Just looking at my notes here. Property sales, they've had mixed results. They've generated 250.
Just say the number before you say property sales, because you say the subject, but I don't know what line. Could you just procedurally just say the number first so our eyes can go to the right number?
Yes, on line 8, we'll talk about gross revenue. So while we generated $253,750 in gross revenue on line 8, on line 9, you'll see the book values of our properties is $305,000, and so we end up taking a loss as a result of that. So that certainly has an impact on us. Has a net loss on our property sales of $50,000, and you'll see that on line 11. Again, that's just a challenge with the assets that we have and that we're working with. So nothing that's shocking or surprising. I'll move down to, let's see. I'm going to go through operating expenses, and I'll start here at line 70. Line 70 is our payroll lines, the largest expense category we have overall, $148,000. Second to that is on line 81, our professional services expenses at $61,000. Overall, when you roll everything together, our operating expenses are on line 105, generally well controlled at $258,000 against an overall budget number of $956,000 for the year. So being a quarter way through the year, we're a quarter way through the year. I think we're on target, even with some of those earlier expenses that we have, like I said, with insurance. So I'm happy with where we are. We're sort of on par with that. Any questions on that?
Trying to find the $956,000 you just threw out. Where's that?
The 900, it's the line 102. It's just our expenditure budget for the year. All right. I can go on further if you want to. We can go into the profit and loss comparison from the net last year. I don't really have too much more for that, but happy to. Otherwise, looking forward for the year, we'll seek to continue to control that gap of $305,000 in operating losses as we move along. I don't think that any of that's a big hurdle. We have talked to the county. There are about 90 to 100 properties that have been foreclosed on that in the past the land bank decided not to take on. We're going to reevaluate those properties and see if there's something in there that we can that we can work with. I think the county would like to see the land bank take those properties off of its hands so it doesn't have to manage those, but that's about a portfolio of 90 or so. Still waiting for the county to give us an auction date when they'll start putting those properties up to auction, and we'll see where we are. I don't want to. I'm happy to discuss it in the executive session because I don't know necessarily if it's something that I really want to put out there publicly as to what the county's thoughts are on things. But we're happy to discuss it offline. But given to say that, I think they have an approach that helps them advance things along, and I think they have just some internal dialogue to have to make sure that the path they're moving down is going to withstand any challenges, because with the changes to the state law, some of this is rather new, and it could potentially be tested, and you wonder if somebody out there is waiting to test some of these foreclosure changes. But that's, a good news piece there. Really, that's what's going to drive most of what we're up against is just inventory to work on and to move. We're waiting to hear on something that we worked on with the city regarding zombie properties. Hopefully, we can give the board an update sooner on that, but I think the city still has to finish negotiating on that. Sam, is that an accurate portrayal of that hasn't been closed out yet?
I think we're at a good place, actually. I think our attorney had emailed you very recently asking for, I want to say, like a W-2 or something.
Yeah, we had to give a W-9.
W-9, that's what it was.
Yeah. But I think, same thing in terms of strategy. I don't know if I want to talk about it here when this is a public committee meeting, but happy to talk about it offline. Not that there's anything to hide from anybody, but it's just.
No, I mean,
this is it's a tricky.
At least from the city's perspective, we have the city has pressing financial needs of its own. So this most recent zombie lawsuit will result in a donation of funds to the land bank, but that probably will be the only one in the near future. Typically the only reason why it's coming to land bank now is because we thought a building was coming with it, and we don't want to provide a building without funding. So we wanted to still give the land bank something.
Yeah, and the plan with that, if that all pulls together in the end, is that we will still do something with those funds to support, rehabbing a building in the neighborhood or very close by. So we're trying to keep any of the use of those funds very much tied to that location or as nearby as possible. And so we do have a need in the neighborhood, I'll say, that we'll look to do that on. And I think the other thing maybe I'll just update the finance committee on is we are, last year we bought the property on Homestead, and we were going to try to put that into a rehab program for this year. But we're going to, for right now, because we have some other rehab opportunities and needs, and Charlie, I think, Judson Street is one of those ones that comes to the top of our mind. We want to address that sooner than later. If we can find somebody who's willing to, purchase that at a price that we think is reasonable, and we can do an enforced mortgage, and they're willing to get that property rehabbed and back out there, they might get to that sooner than we can. And if it makes financial sense, we're willing to entertain an offer on that. So the net financial outcome is pretty much the same for us. It's either we generate revenue from its rehab and sale, or we sell it at a price that allows us to generate something from it without having to go through the full rehab ourselves. So that's all I have for the finance committee. Does anybody have any questions, old or new business, to bring up?
I have none.
All right. Then, we can hold this meeting adjourned at 2:54. The next committee will be at 3 o'clock, Acquisition and Disposition Committee. I think many of you are also here for that, so we'll pause our live stream, and you can either call back in or put yourself on mute, and we'll talk to you in a few minutes.
And I just put it on mute.